a lot of people just hope they can do it. Well, imagine lining up and thinking, I know that I have hit the numbers and done the work and done the volume and produced enough fatigue and training and recovered and peaked and tapered just like I know I should, that I've set myself up the best. Not, I think what I did worked. Hey, buddy.
What's up, man?
How are you?
Oh, I'm just,
Dude, you sound terrible.
do I really?
Yeah, you don't sound terrible, but you don't sound good.
Well, you know how it goes when you're coming out of it? You usually sound worse at the end, but you feel better. I feel good.
Yeah, you sound like you feel good, but you sound a little nasally.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here in my Challenge Knoxville hoodie trying to stay warm.
Oh man, what's the temp there? It is straight cold here.
It's really sunny, and it's 37, it says.
Oh, it's like summer. It was 15 here this morning, and we got snow yesterday.
Come on.
Seriously, I like almost slept in my crushing iron hoodie. No lie.
Speaking of sleep, Dr. Van Aken wouldn't be too proud of me this week. His 4 hour a night sleep patterns have been crushed into oblivion by me.
Oh, well, I think there's a time and place for everything. I've actually recently gone against the grain as well. We tried a new bedtime routine with Hayden, and the last 2 nights we've both gotten like 8 hours of sleep. So it's
Whoa.
yeah, man, yeah, it's a game changer. I mean, it's a game changer. Feeling definitely rejuvenated. I'm not sure if it's like a mean trick that he's playing on us, a little teaser, but we'll take every night we can get right now.
Yeah, wow. Well, speaking of teasers, we got to make a couple quick announcements before we get going because one of the things we really want to get going is some reviews and subscriptions on iTunes, correct?
That is correct. Big time. I know it takes a minute to make the review, but it would be very, very helpful for us. We're always open for feedback. It helps us, tune up and correct certain things about what you want to hear as a listener. And so here, I think what a good idea to kind of jumpstart that is every month, we'll start at this month of December, is that we'll randomly choose one person who does a review a month, and I'll give that person a free consultation. And what that consultation involves and includes is we'll go over past racing, training, and history. If you have a Training Peaks account, that'll be something that we can look at together, and I can look through areas of improvement, things you might not have noticed from an objective standpoint, kind of outside looking in. And then I'll give you ways to create better training practices and choosing better races for the upcoming season. That's probably about at least an hour-long conversation, if not a little more than that, with some email exchanges and some other things like that. So we'll do that once a month. So if you have any interest in that at all, give us a review, give us your feedback, and you might be the winner.
Dude, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, yeah. I usually charge about a 175 for that because it does take a long time, but it's definitely worth it, especially if you're a person who likes to coach yourself. It's a good way to have somebody with fresh eyes and different philosophies, or maybe different kind of knowledge and experience, look at your training pitfalls, areas you could improve on, because that's what I kind of do with myself, obviously with my athletes on a daily basis, and then give you kind of a skeleton outline of how you should structure your season going forward. That should hopefully lead to better results.
Okay. Hang on, I was just leaving a review. I was going to try and get that. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, small fine print, you're not eligible.
Ah. All right. Well, I've already gotten a few of those, but so the other thing we're going to start doing, now that we've got a few of these in the bag, we hope to. No, we hope we're going to start putting these out on Thursdays and Mondays,
Yep.
just to give you consistency with it. And the other thing is, on Fridays we're going to be emailing out what we're going to call the Friday Five, and it's basically a nugget on swim, one on bike, one on run, one on maybe nutrition, health, sleep, whatever, and then a wild card or something. But there'll be 5 nuggets of good information that can kind of take you into the weekend and maybe fire you up about some workouts over the weekend and
Sweet
keep you
deal.
back in the groove. So
That's right.
there's 3 of the days covered. If I could start posting on the blog a little bit more, we've got that going. So anyway, today I'm gonna, because I am a little bit under the weather, but we're gonna be talking about a book that you recently read, and it's a topic I'm thoroughly interested in, which is basically about breaking through. Is that kind of where we're going here?
Yeah, I mean, it was my reason for purchasing the book was breaking through. The book itself is it's called Triathlon 2.0. It's by professional triathlete and coach Jim Vance, and it's really called the Data Driven Triathlete. These are the types of things that you have to pay a lot of attention to, the details, if you really want to make that leap from 15th, 20th in your age group to on the podium.
That's
Uh,
me.
and that's you. That's most of us. And that's me. I'm usually a top 10, 12 guy, and for me to make that jump, uh, and I always kind of say this, I feel like I'm a much better coach than I am an athlete because if I was coaching myself, which I do, I would hate myself. And sometimes I get frustrated because I'm very good at breaking down and analyzing my data and my progressions, but I'm not the greatest sometimes at adhering to it. Um, but this book, I read it over the weekend. Actually, it's a great book. Um, is just really based on some of the areas you can focus on if you really are interested in taking your performance and predicting your performance to the next level. Um, and that could be from the back of the pack to the middle of the pack, could be the middle of the pack to the front of the pack. It could be from just off the podium to the podium.
What are some things you learned?
Most athletes, they kind of fall into a couple buckets. One is they don't care to look at the data, and so they hire a coach, or we have the athlete who cares about the data but doesn't have the time, so they hire a coach, or you have the athlete who has the time and likes to look at the data, and then they try to coach themselves. And so this book is kind of geared towards that person, but as a coach, it's obviously very, very helpful as far as looking through kind of a different lens. I think sometimes getting lost in the data and the numbers can, I think, kind of blind your planning. But to an extent, especially when we're talking about long distance racing, especially getting anything over a half, is you have to be able to you always need to include that personal touch, but you need to be able to look at the data, see what it's telling you, see what the athlete's telling you, and then make a decision. So I'll kind of use something that I've always kind of worked on, and that's an email I sent out earlier today to my athletes. Have you had time to read that yet?
I, s-
I'm saying you scanned it.
I scanned it, yeah. I thought that was going to be maybe a podcast coming up or something like that.
It could be. We could do it. It'll be definitely part of the base training series we do for as far as how to plan your year. But some of the biggest takeaways I looked at or I took from it was when you look back at yourself and the where you are in your own athlete life cycle. Um, base training should take up the majority of that time. Um, and once you start to kind of plateau in your base training in certain areas of the data, heart rate, power, pace, they start to kind of the return on investment starts to become not as much. Like you're not seeing as big a jumps, week to week to week to week to week. Then that's when it's time to change things up. And that's different for each person. Like, you look at standard plans that people shell out, and it's like 12 weeks of base, 8 weeks of build, whatever, 6 weeks of peak, and then race. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's totally dependent. That's going to be right for probably one person. Um, let's take an athlete like you, for example, who did a late season Ironman. Well, if you're doing a fairly early season 70.3, I would say May is early. And if you've even maintained some sort of fitness and staying moving, you just did about 6 months worth of base work.
Yeah.
So you're not going to, more than likely, you're going to be able to pick up that aerobic load a lot quicker than somebody, per se, who has taken a lot of time off or is just very new to the sport, or has done, only sprint and Olympic races trying to move up to a 70.3. So it might take you 4 to 6 weeks, and it might take athlete B 16 to 20 weeks. I've got athletes who are training for their first Ironman. They've only done 170.3. More than likely, unless they have some kind of genetic disposition to absorb aerobic training differently, they're probably going to be in that boat of 16 to 20 weeks maybe. But that's where training and literally just keeping track of what you're doing week to week to see the improvements, that's where you're able to collect it, use it, and apply it. There's so many training devices out there that people just have that they don't use because they don't know they don't know how to apply what the information they're getting to future training because they like to already have it planned out.
Okay, so I'm just thinking here. Can we use me as an example? Because I think I am kind of in the boat. Let's just say, maybe has 1 or 2 Ironman under the belt. Going
Man,
into
I was kind of hoping you're gonna let me go there. I'm not gonna lie. I was
uh,
like, I hope he lets me use him as his guinea pig.
yeah, let's just do it,
Um,
man. Because you know me as well as anybody and how I train. Well, better than anybody. So why don't you just take me as an example and
so yeah, this is perfect. So for you and yourself, and obviously I can't, I pretty much know what you did off the top of my head, but without looking at it, can't necessarily make um some conclusions that I probably could had you been consistent and diligent in keeping track
Mhm.
of what you do and when you do it and how the result is. But knowing you just from our conversations pretty much daily, there are proven ways, proven metrics, proven numbers that you need to be able to produce in order to be able to compete at a certain level. Where you're one of the types of athletes who likes to find their own way, which is a good thing, but sometimes their own way always ends up being the way that requires less. And that's less volume, and maybe that's less intensity, and it's kind of not keeping track of, so if you took yourself and you actually stuck to a regimented plan, not so much one where you were just had no freedom, but that you knew and you had the information, then you said, all right, at key points during the season, I need to be able to hit X. I need to be able to hit B. I need to be able to hit C. Um, you're more of a benchmark guy. All right, I got 3 weeks. I need to, like, for example, before I started working with you like 4 years ago, you were going to get your first week. Well, even before that first week came, I gave it to you about 4 weeks in advance.
Mhm.
And I said, you need to prepare your body in a manner in which you feel like you will be able to complete this first week. So using that as an example, I can say, all right, Mike, if you want to be able to run X time for a marathon, during training, you're going to have to be able to hit these A, B, and C benchmarks at this heart rate with this pace, and it only accumulating a certain amount of fatigue for you to be able to reasonably walk into the race and know. And then that's the biggest difference, I think, with when people race is that a lot of people just hope they can do it.
Yeah.
Well, imagine lining up and thinking, I have done exactly what it was going to take. Now, whether the cards fall in my favor, whether the competition shows up as great or not great, whether the race conditions are, favorable or non-favorable, I know that I have hit the numbers and done the work and done the volume and produced enough fatigue and training and recovered and peaked and tapered just like I know I should, that I've set myself up the best. Not, I think what I did worked. And that's the biggest difference between athlete A, who is very interested and committed to being on the podium, to the other one who trains and says they want to get there but doesn't put enough work in the details to actually make that jump.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Every time I go into a race, it seems like, all right, I figured it out, and when I get done, I'm gonna share this with the world. I've got the secret, man, and I've never had the secret yet, but
You're still working on it.
I'm still working on it. But what you're telling me right now makes a lot more sense because I would like to know a little bit more, and most of my training is lacks volume and it includes intensity. And as we talked about in the last podcast, that may not, obviously be the right thing, but it's a patience element with me. And I've done 4 Ironman races and I've been in the top 30 in my age group every time. And this last one, I think I got to 23rd or something like that, which is progress. There's no doubt about it. But that 23rd to third is a mountain of a distance.
Yeah.
It's such a difference. But I think it's scalable, and I feel good about getting there. But I do need a little bit more strategy in that plan. I mean,
I think the attitude in general is very, very predominant in the sport, and especially endurance sports, is thinking one thing and saying one thing rarely ever leads to the actual execution and performance that you either say you want to get, or that you're training to get, or that you hope to get. And it kind of goes back to one of the original things, obviously, is most people, this is my personal belief, that a lot of people sign up for an Ironman because they get 364 days out of the year to tell people they're training for one, but they just don't do the work required to actually finish. And so they like the visions of grandeur in the allure, and everybody loves the thought of finishing an Ironman. A lot of people love the vision and the thought of going to Kona or 70.3 World Championships. Very, very, very few on both those ends of the spectrum are willing to do what it takes to do that. Whether it's the first timer who's going to go all in and really try to do their best in their first Ironman, whether it's that top end age group where he's like, yeah, I want to qualify for Kona. Do you? Because if you knew what it took, maybe you wouldn't. Because then you have to actually have a discussion and say, all right, am I actually willing to go to this level? To do what is pretty much by the book, what needs to be done in order to get there. And if you're not, and if you can't look at it in a way and say, all right, yeah, maybe I do want to go to Kona, but maybe I want to go and watch because that's the closest I'm ever going to get, because I'm just not willing to do the work that's required to get there. And that's in a lot of areas of life, I guess.
Well, let's decide if I really want to get to 70.3 worlds real quick, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot a little bit. It's in May, right? In Chattanooga, yep. My qualifying race, technically. And my goal is to get to 70.3 worlds, which is, as we've discussed before, going to be very difficult this time because there's going to be a lot more people there, most likely, and a lot of good people because it is in Chattanooga. The Worlds is in. So, my off-the-cuff thought on this was that going into the new year, instead of being, behind the 8 ball like I usually am because I've slacked off all this time, my first benchmark was to be going into the year feeling like I could do a fairly solid Olympic on January 1st, in all my events. Now, that could be unorthodox. I don't know if that has anything to do with where you would try and put me, but that's what I'm thinking. Are you just thinking I should probably go into that with the idea that I could go 70.3 comfortably starting on day one with 4.5 months to go?
No, I don't necessarily think it's kind of either.
Okay.
I think kind of an understanding of how you need to structure your these 24 weeks, because that's what it is from this last Monday.
Uh-huh.
Um, Not that I'm counting. Uh, it's I think that's in basic understanding, and so I'll go ahead and kind of allude to it since we're gonna kind of do a series on racing, and race preparation and training preparation, and it's we'll discuss season review, the preparation phase, the base phase, the build phase, the specialty phase, and the peak phase. And then how to taper, and then how to review your race and make the changes. So each podcast will cover something different, but for you, just a basic understanding of kind of what you and I talked about on the day when we first met. The prep phase for me, we talk about building the chassis, and that's the base phase. Well, the prep phase for me, the way I explain it to athletes is it is a period in which you are gathering tools. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is you need to gather the tools necessary to be able to start working on your chassis in that base phase. That's not going out and pounding out runs. That's just getting, in my opinion, it's gathering tools and gathering momentum and gathering consistency. Um, and that's getting in some swims, getting in some runs, getting in some rides, doing a little bit of skill work, doing a little bit of endurance work, doing a little bit of force, big gear stuff, or hill runs, prepping your body to get in the groove to be able to actually know where you need to start. And then the longer you can, the sooner you get to where you can actually string together 1 week of base training, the better. And I mean, because if some athletes spend almost 20 weeks in it a year. But if you can, and it's the safest place to get those improvements. The once you got to the base phase, it becomes a little bit risky, for the self-coached athletes, because you're going to peak early, or you're going to do too much, or you're going to do too little. And for you, I think it's all right. You need a clear, you need blocks. All right, Mike, you got 4 weeks to get ready
Mm-hmm.
to be ready to be ready
Mm-hmm.
to be ready to start your training. And then the base training is boring, but I personally, it's like my favorite, because there's no pressure. It's skill work, it's big gear stuff, it's working on efficiency in all three sports, it's some strength training, and it's putting together the stuff to where you don't necessarily have to start nitpicking everything you do. You know, then, because for me, you've done every single one of your Ironman, a lot of them, just on base training, because you don't ever really start the serious consistency of it early enough to actually have the opportunity to get to a build phase.
Mm.
So imagine taking the approach you usually take to the last 6 to 8 weeks before a big race, and making those where you've already accumulated enough volume to where you can knock out some very hard efforts, and they're consistent and they're precise, and they have a clear cut goal. And then being done and be like, yeah, dude, I I'm just kind of not hoping, like, my numbers say yes, and this is the best I've ever felt, and I'm prepared, the best. Not, I wonder if what I did this year worked. I guess we'll find out. And then you stay stuck in that 80% range of the people who do just enough to kind of be good enough for their natural ability, and not the other 10% that says, I'm willing to kind of go the distance, and put in the work, and not play catch up, but get ahead of it. And
Right.
your biggest thing is getting ahead of it.
There's no question. I think there's proof in the history because I've really struggled early in like early season races for the most part. So, I mean, other than over at Knoxville where I usually crush the podium at Rev, but now they don't even have Rev anymore. But
Yeah, it's gone.
but it's an Olympic. But any kind of earlier season half, I'm usually ridiculously crushed, and that included this year in Lake Logan. When is that? Like July?
Oh, just like it's like first week of August.
Yeah, it's first week of August. That felt like When
Like the month before your Ironman. Yeah,
yeah.
that one.
But that was the thing. You're right, because after that, I went right back at it and just turned it up, and really got to a point where I was like, all right, this feels great. I felt great about training. But yeah, it was sort of this. I I I raced Ironman Wisconsin on a base build. That makes sense. Now that I think about it. I mean, I basically got to where I thought I should get, or close to it, and then raced on that without any kind of repetition at that distance or level or anything like that. So there was just it was kind of a crapshoot, as always. So going into my new year here, racing a May half, I guess that means I should be doing what right now?
And I think a lot of it's just like, do I want to make the decision to quit being a cliff note athlete,
Yeah,
looking for the shortcuts, looking for the minimal thing, looking for the procrastinating option of least resistance, but formulating it in a way to where it sounds different, so maybe it'll work. When the fact is that the people who've been winning and doing things have been doing the same thing for a long time. It hasn't changed. Um, and so for you, I think it's just, do one thing a day for a month. If you need to take a day off, take a day off, but it shouldn't be a prerequisite. It's, I, I have had the kind of the same feeling with people who say that I only have 14 hours a week to train.
mm-hmm.
Um, and you cut them short on a recovery week by only giving them 8 hours. It's
Yeah,
like these people only have a certain amount of time to train. Maximize it. You can still build in recovery, but don't cheat them. If they work hard to make those 14 hours, then it'll take some of them away. Through a Nash or traditional, 3 week on, 1 week off block, which is what a lot of people do. This time of year, if you can fit in 12 hours, fit in 12 hours every week. It's like just fit it in, and you can still find ways to get your recovery in. But right now, you're probably not training hard enough at a volume and intensity enough to where you need a big recovery week for the adaptations to take place. So for you, it's all right. I'm gonna go in order. I'm gonna swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run until you get to a point where you say, all right, I think I'm gonna probably add a couple 2 days in there, sprinkle a few 2 days in there. If you can do that for 2, 3, 4 weeks to where you've got in a traditional prep phase, then you can start to plan out your base, because you're not going to try this is what a lot of people do. It's the new year. I'm going to get going this first week and I'm going to crush it.
yeah,
Yeah, well, have fun taking the rest of January off, because you know you're going
yeah,
to be so burnt out and so toast and so run down. Then you're probably going to get sick or you're going to get injured, and now you're going to be behind a month and a half or 2 months, and you're going to get discouraged. You're going to question everything you did. Then you're going to come back and try to play catch up. There is no substitute for starting early and just being consistent and doing the work. And like I said, I think an early season half marathon is an awesome thing for people. February, March, because it kind of gets you going, it gets your competitive juices going, and sprinkling some rides in there, and some swims. But for you and for a lot of people right now, it's just keep it going, and keep it going and have some kind of a purpose, and just know that what I'm doing is getting better, and what I'm doing is preparing myself to get better. And then once I reach that point to where I've gotten about as good as I can get, um, with my aerobic base and my aerobic adaptations, then it's time to focus in on the stuff that's going to make me competitive. You're doing all the stuff right now where you can complete it and just kind of get by in your athletic ability. Well, if you want to actually compete, then you need to start early enough to where you can even get to the point in your training to where you're able to do that. And you have yet to get to that point in your athletic career.
yeah. I think that's pretty obvious.
Plus, you've got a huge wager on the line with CC.
Oh, I know. He's just got to be loving the fact that I've been sick this week.
Oh man, he texted me the day and was like, "Man, I heard Mike's sick. Why don't you send him out for a half? Dig him a little bit of a deeper hole."
Yeah, I know. I got a thing jotted down. It's called 10 Weeks to Ironman Wisconsin, and I'll send you that workout because I recorded everything. Of course, when you're talking about recording everything, it helps you when athletes have Garmin and have numbers, like real numbers, not just like, hey, I did this and felt pretty good. or
Yeah, that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
I'll use Ann Malin for example. We use no heart rate data, and we use no um, kind of data download in her kind of very Mike Torelli-esque last minute prep for Ironman Louisville.
Yeah.
I told her because she was so behind in running, we needed to kind of take some risks and do things really smart, but she had a great cycling fitness. And so we went strictly chrono on the run
Uh-huh.
because I didn't want her to know what she was running. I just needed her to go by feel. And then on the rides, I just needed her to continue riding, but just do some harder efforts based on, effort. And swim wise, we just had to get some swims in. And she ended up PRing by a lot. And I think she was like 10th in her age group, which is pretty stellar. And we
Yeah.
use no data. And we use no data. And so you don't have to. Is it nice? Sure. Um, is it necessary? No. But if you got it, why aren't you using it? It's like, that's my thing. It's like all these people have a power meter, and it's just like it's a really expensive cat eye, or speedometer, because they just don't know how to use the numbers and train by the numbers and change them and, look at them, from an analytical standpoint. So you don't have to have it. Is it nice? Sure. But it's by no means a prerequisite, um, to a
Yeah.
point. To a point.
That point you bring up with Ann is really interesting because, like, let's say I'm trying to break through from 23 to the podium or whatever, but if I decide to keep doing my things my own way or whatever, and I want to break up about 10 spots, that all comes down to the bike. That's just my theory.
Yeah,
Like
for
like you
you it
said,
does. You're gonna be fresher off. You're gonna go faster on the bike and come off fresher to finally be able to run, something where you're actually, capable.
yeah, because I gotta tell you, man. Same thing. Like had never been more prepared for the run than when I did Ironman Chattanooga. I was running like almost legit run training numbers, 17, 18, 19 mile type things. And I felt great about my run, but I couldn't execute it. So, I ran the exact same time I've run like every race, 4:20, you know.
Yeah.
And we had talked about that before, but if I had that bike base and that bike fitness, that would make I think 10 slot difference in my race for various reasons. So, you know, you can kind of incrementally maybe go up, but I don't think that if you're going to spend extra time anywhere, I think it needs to be on the bike personally, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it's hard for you to get out and do long rides now because we all left you.
I know. I mean, I my theories. The solo riding. I always put an hour. If my long ride during the summer is like 4 hours or something like that, which it was something like that this year. I always put an hour on in energy on the crowds, and an hour on just being in a race. I kind of like use that as my
See, perfect example of rationalizing a theory to make less equal more.
yeah. And it does get you through, but that doesn't mean that you're ready for it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like just getting all jacked up about something and not being able to finish the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it does exactly what it's supposed to. It continues to make your dream a tease and not a reality.
All right, well, you set me straight today, man.
Yeah, you've been put on notice. If I could drop this head mic, I would, but I can't.
All right, so let's summarize what you're saying. I mean, like a lot of people um, just don't go as far as they should. Basically, is that what you're saying? I mean, like,
No, they just don't put enough effort into looking at how they should plan their season
yeah,
to to come to a point and to a day to where you can race your best. They just kind of go race. and sometimes work out and sometimes it doesn't. But planning to fail is failing to plan. Vice versa. They would say failing to plan is planning to fail. And that's pretty much triathlon training. You can just kind of throw it together and get what you get, or you can take the time or have somebody else take the time to put it together and stick to it, and know that when you go into a race and you've got everything, then you've done everything and you've used every tool and you've done everything you were willing to do to reach and execute your perfect performance. Whether you do or not on that day is, we'll see. But at least you're going to be on the start line and feel the best. And that's a feeling and a mentality that I think is priceless.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you got to trick yourself like I do. I always have to trick myself, and it's like going into a test without studying, really, or
Yeah, man. You're like, oh, I can wing it, or I'm usually I'm good at guessing. I'm like, no, you're not. Just you're gonna fail and study more next time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but the emotional feeling that you have going into a test when you've studied and you know that you're ready for all the questions is a huge advantage. I mean, so that alone puts you on the starting line with less anxiety, which is another huge part of it.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever that guy's name in my age group, Pierre Lafontaine or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he goes into the races with a pretty solid feeling when he's not dropping 9:30s at Wisconsin.
Yeah, he probably does.
54 years old, 9:30.
Yeah, it's the same people. Every year that every race never works out. Or I had a bad day. You had a bad day because you've had a bad year, and you haven't planned enough. One bad race is an anomaly. All bad races are always being injured or whatever it is. It's a pattern, and you're just not doing what you need to do to plan better. There's really no excuse except for the ones you continue to make.
Yeah. So we're gonna put together a PDF on this, right? Like an outline for people to kind of loosely plan their season or like understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll get a PDF together that'll kind of help us. I won't go into detail of every phase, but it'll kind of be a rough outline of the series we'll do as in terms of preparation, the preparation phase, the base phase, a build phase, what a specialty phase might look like, how to taper for your perfect race, and then also at the end it'll be how to analyze your results from your race to plan your next block. And obviously there's a lot to take into consideration within each of those topics, and that's why we'll do them in a series. I mean, I would definitely encourage anyone who's listening to take out a pen and paper, make notes, email us if you have questions about a topic or something you didn't understand. And definitely have the outline ready so you can kind of fill in some of the bullets to something that might kind of address you specifically. And honestly, if there's anybody out there listening who wants to reach out to us and be the test dummy for how I would plan your season, I'll take the first response to Crushing Iron. What is it? CrushingIron@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take the first person to that, and I will use them as athlete example on how I would structure a season.
Ooh, Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, you'll be Triathlon Joe. Or Jan, whatever.
I like it, man. All right, man, let's wrap it up. Don't be afraid to leave us a rating on iTunes or subscribe to the podcast there. Please pass the word around and tell your friends about it because we're on a roll and we're going to keep going. I mean, we haven't even got to the season yet. Can you imagine?
Oh, man, there's so much more good stuff out there. So give us a review, shoot us an email, and I look forward to hearing from Triathlon Joe or Jan and using you as Exhibit A for the next 3 to 4 weeks.
A lot of good stuff.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.